Hello everyone, I want to welcome you all to another episode of RG22 Outdoor Adventures. And in this episode, I'm going to be building a multi-jointed brown trout swim bait using poplar. And I have two planks that are glued together. And right now I had the lure, got it all cut out and everything, the basic shape, and did some of the sanding. And right now I'm just kind of drawing just marking the center line. So that way I kind of have an idea of how I want to basically cut the lure and everything and shape it. Okay, well, here I am getting ready to. Actually, what I'm doing is I'm taking the speed square and measuring the areas that I'm going to be making my cuts to separate the body. These cuts are going to be some V cuts, and as you can see, it's just basically just marking one side and then taking that square and going around the lure. Pretty simple. Just have to get everything on the flat sides and make sure all your lines match up and go ahead and draw your lines. So after I got these lines all drawn out, what I did next was I drew another line, either up above or below. I don't think it really matters, and I measured about a 1/4 inch. And from there, I then drew a diagonal line to the middle of the lure body. And at that point, I did the front and I did the back, and I did all that. That's where we're going to make our cuts and make our V grooves that eventually are going to become the joints on the lure. Well, after I've got these lines all measured and drawn out on the lure for my joints, I'm taking the lure over to the bandsaw and I'm going to get my angles cut. Now, there's another method that I could have used, and that's taking a piece of angled wood and that's cut at an angle using a miter box or a miter saw, and then putting that into a vise, getting it all lined up with your cut lines, and then cutting the angles that way. I chose to do it on the bandsaw this time, just because I got the table nice and straight, and for me, I've had some more accurate cuts. But still, you got to take your time, take going really slow, and you'll do all the front and back and the right and left, and you do not want to cut all the way down through the middle. Just cut right up almost to it, but not through it. It's amazing how strong these are when you're cutting and carving with these joints. And then when you're all done, that's when you get ready to cut them, when you're ready to paint and seal and everything. Okay, well, now that I've got these V grooves cut that you can see, it's time to start drawing out the top profile of the lure. And I found the widest part, which is usually behind right at the head, just behind the gills, would be the widest part of the lure. And typically that's the widest part in the fish. And what I did was, if you see I have the two planks of wood glued together, I took the middle of each plank and marked that. Then what I did was I took a straight edge that you're seeing me do now, and I drew a line from that middle line that I drew all the way to the mark that I had where I'd want the widest part of the lure. And that's where I'm going to cut. And I do the same thing on the front as well as the back of the lure. When all that's done, what you're going to see next is taking the lure over to the bandsaw again. Or if you wanted to, you could just take it to a belt sander or a disc sander and sand all those down. But considering the amount of wood that have to be removed, I just decided just to cut it. It would probably be a lot easier. And here you can see I'm making the cuts on the bandsaw, just going along those lines. Again, take your time, don't rush. You don't want to really mess this up. If you cut too much or not enough, you're going to have one heck of a time trying to correct everything with carving and sanding. And again, you do the front, you do the back, you do the right, and you do the left, and it should all come out about the same. And after we've got all those cuts made, as you can see, we're going to the belt sander and the disc sander and going to get everything all nice and straightened out and sanded and everything like that. So that's where the final shape, the curvature of the lure and everything, the initial stuff is going to be done before we actually start our carving. Well, I've got the lure cut, the angles and everything's cut, so the top profile is done. The sides are kind of sanded to a nice little curve. And now I'm starting to draw the chamfer lines on the top, on the right and left sides of the top, and then we'll do the bottoms. And then we'll measure a little bit and do the sides as well. And at that point, that's kind of where we start our carving. So we have our chamfer lines on the top and bottom, and then we also have the chamfer lines that you'll see on the side, and that's going to help establish the basic round profile of the lure if you look on the top and along the bottom. So that's kind of what we'll be establishing there. Okay, so the chamfer lines are about drawn. Once they are, that's when it's time to start carving the lure. So as you can see, I'm just kind of marking them in now so they don't wash out when I'm holding onto it and moving my hand around on the lure positioning with the carving knife. So depending upon what you use for a carving knife, whether you're using a box cutter or a regular carving knife, and in this instance here, I'm using a regular carving knife, and here I am sharpening it or polishing the blade on a leather strop. So that's one thing you're going to want to have if you're going to plan on using a carving knife. Box cutter, you won't need to. You're always going to have sharp blades to replace. So basically, you want to stay within the lines, get your basic carving done, and then after that, it's probably out to drilling the eyes, and then getting it sanded or adding whatever other details you want to add to it, such as gills, fins, and things like that. So enjoy the music while you continue watching the carving. Okay, so after we're done carving all the chamfer lines out, and we've got the basic shape of the lure done, this is where I start taking the lure. I put it in the vise over here, as you can see, and I'm going to start with a very coarse grit sandpaper and work my way to finer and finer and finer, probably until maybe about 150 grit from say 60 to 150. And so that's only two grits for me that I have. So from 60 to 150. So we're going to start sanding this down. And basically all I'm doing is we're going to sand along those chamfer lines and along that center line and just try to get a nice curvature of the lure. Um, when that's all done, you obviously work your way around the lure, working from doing the top, then working the bottom, then doing the front and back, and so on and so forth. However you want to do it, whatever pattern you want to follow, you can do it whatever however you like. And as you can see, I'm also using the tape and sandpaper method I mentioned in the brook trout video. So here we are sanding, and like I said, we're starting. I usually start at the back, work my way to the front, then flip the lure over and do the same thing on the other side. But like I said, you can do it however you like. It's up to you. Well, after I've gotten it all sanded, unfortunately I had some issues with recording and things like that. And I carved out all the gills, did a lot of sanding, got the jawline carved out, and got a lot of layer effects from the carving and the sanding on the gills. And that took quite a while. Then I decided I wanted to put in lexan fins, and I took a Dremel. I marked out the width of the lexan on with a pair of calipers, and then I traced that onto the wood, and I did the same thing for all the fins, and then also where I was going to place the pectoral and pelvic fins as well with the calipers. And then I took a Dremel and I then carved out a groove for those fins. And as you can see, I'm pulling out a piece of paper, and you can see I cut out a bunch of fins that I'm using as templates that will be traced onto the it'll be traced onto the lexan, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the dorsal fin, the tail fin, and all those fins are going to be all traced on the lexan, and then all cut out, sanded, and everything, and then eventually fit into place and glued in. So that's kind of what I'm doing here, is getting everything all set up for the fins. Okay, so I've got, as you saw in the previous part of the video, just a little bit ago, you noticed that all the parts were actually drawn out on the lexan already. And here I am getting ready to trace the last pattern that I cut out, which is going to be the dorsal fin. I've traced out all the other patterns, the tail fin and all the anal fin, the adipose fin, and all the other ones are already traced and ready to get cut. So once this dorsal fin's done, I'm going to go and cut all the pieces off on the bandsaw. And then we're going to start getting these things sanded and get them fit into the into the slots that we did earlier. So there you can see the picture, all of the parts already traced on and ready to get cut. So in this picture here, in this part of the video right now, what I'm getting ready to do is I'm getting ready to put the lexan on the bandsaw, and you're going to notice I'm going to start cutting out all the pieces on here. Again, this is something you really don't want to rush. Just take your time. I know it's relatively easy to cut, but take your time. Make sure you got good cuts. It makes it a lot easier to sand and to get everything just right. So always take your time when you're doing this stuff. The tape isn't there or anything to protect the lexan. It's just there to help me trace things out and draw them out. It's just easier to draw on the tape. So that's all. So that's all it's for. If it was for a diving lip, then most likely it's going to be used to protect the lexan, as well as to help trace the pattern onto, so I can see what I'm doing. So after I've got the lexan all cut out, I sanded everything down, got the edges all rounded off, and scuffed them all up. So that way, when I put the finish on, the finish will stick nicely and adhere. So I did all that, and I just wanted to show you how I did everything just with the adipose fin here. And as you can notice, I'm sanding everything down. And when that's all done, before I place it in there, I'll just do a quick little test fit to see how I want the fin to lay on the lure. And once all that's done, I'll pull it out. I'll put some baking soda in there, just this tiny, tiny amount, and a drop of super glue to get it positioned. And once it's positioned where I like it, then I drown the rest of it in super glue with the baking soda, build up the edges, get it all sanded down, and make it really look good. That way, when I put that clear coat on before I paint it, it looks really nice. Everything is nice and smooth, and the painting just goes. The painting is just that much better. So I think this really helps with the look with the lure. Well, after we've got the fins all put in and we're getting ready to actually separate the sections, I wanted to start making the twist wire. So took some wire. I think it's 0.051 inches. You can get it's aircraft safety wire. You can get it off of Amazon. Um, so just kind of showing you how I do it here. I have a Allen key and a vise. Cut a cut a section of wire. Bend it in half with a pair of pliers. Get it in the drill chuck, and then ever so carefully twist it until it gets to that nice um, hanger, and then you cut the end and you're all set, ready to go. And that's for your hook hangers and your line tie. If you're making a jointed lure, you have to join two pieces of wire together. So it's a loop to loop connection. So what you do after you make one loop, you then take the wire, put it through the loop, and then you put the end that you made the bend on back into the drill chuck, and it's the exact same process. And assuming if you're using one or two sections, however many sections you use, you do it, you do them all in pairs. So, for instance, on this lure, I needed, I had two sections, two hinges for each joint. So that's one, two, that's four, that's eight wires that I had to twist, four pairs. Okay, so after we've done all the sanding and everything like that, got all the fins placed in, um, I got the bottom drilled out, got some melt for the lead holes, got the lead holes in, and now I'm kind of just, I'm going to mock the lure up so you guys can see. I'm getting all the holes drilled out so that way I can see exactly how my line ties all the hardware is going to fit in. So there I'm drilling some of the holes out. I do that in every single section. And then once all that's put together, just want to show you guys what this looks like. So here's the lure getting put together. Before I So you can see all three sections that are just mocked up right now. All the fins are already super glued and baking soda in place. Doing a little bit more drilling because the twist wire isn't fitting in like it should. Okay, so there's the lure put together, all mocked up, and there you can see before we're going to put any kind of finish or paint on it, that's what it looks like. So here in this part of the video, what I'm doing is I'm filling each section up with the almighty super glue and baking soda. This is how I'm filling all the lead holes in. So you can see a little bit of super glue or baking soda, some drowned it in super glue. It it hardens to a nice, really hard, what looks like a salt. And then we get it all sanded down, make it nice and smooth. Put a couple coats of finish over it, and then put some two-part epoxy, or if you have UV finish, you can use a UV finish over it all. And then we let it dry for the depends on how long it's set for, tack free. Some finishes are 4 hours. The one I'm using, unfortunately, is roughly 24 hours before it's dried tack free. So another 24 hours after this, when the finish is applied, I can start painting it. So that's what I'm doing for each section of the lure. Well, after I've got the clear coat on, the lure's all sealed, sanded. I put a coat of sealant on, then I finally put a coat of clear epoxy. And once that's all set and dried, I then took the lure, and what we're going to start doing is I'm going to start painting a base coat of white. That white's, every other color is going to go over that, but that's just our base primer coat. So I took some opaque white, thinned it out nicely, and instead of spraying one heavy coat on, I'm going to spray multiple light coats, so that way at least it gets some time to dry. And I'm going to be doing each section separately, as you'll see. So there's going to be the tail section first, and then I did the body, and then I did the head of the lure. And after that, we'll let that dry, and then start moving on to some multiple colors. And we'll start seeing the lure take shape. So enjoy the painting, and we'll start explaining as I go along. The next layer of paint on this brown trout on all three sections is going to be a layer of gold. And I did this on the entire lure, painted it again, doing multiple light coats, but going pretty heavy on it because I wanted to have the gold try to shine through the rest of the colors. So as you can see, we start painting. I'm doing some pretty light coats, like I said, and then just doing, like I said, multiple light coats to get a nice heavy coat on there. And again, we're going to be doing this on the tail section, the mid section of the lure, and then the head. And I think I went heaviest on the head with the gold. And I also did all the fins as well. All right, after I've got this the gold fin completed, I'm moving on to wicked yellow gold, and I'm going pretty light. I'm trying to do multiple light coats, but I want the gold to still show through. And the idea is, obviously, we're gonna do all three sections, and I did everything, but I think I didn't really get all of the head. I wanted to leave the head with a lot of gold, so I can start doing the details when we were ready to paint that. Well, so after I got done painting the wicked yellow gold on the body, couldn't decide whether I wanted to make the under part white or leave it yellow. and just paint a white streak going across the middle third of the lure. Because there are, in some instances, some brown trout do have white bellies or off-white bellies. Not all of them have orange or yellow, what you see kind of in illustrations. There's a mix of both. So looking at a lot of the pictures, I decided just to do the white belly, do the white flanks, and I can decide what I want to do after that. So after I got everything painted on all three sections of this lure, I gave it another coat of sealant, and that's when we start going over the detail. So remember, nice light coats, build it up to, just build up your coats and go from there. So next few steps will be doing the detail work with all the spots. So now that I've got the body, all three sections painted white, now's the time where I'm going to start doing a lot of the detail work. And this is where I'm going to start taking some, if I remember, it was opaque black paint with a brush. And I'm going to start at the bottom part of that middle third of the lure. And taking the brush and just making some dots. Their ear doesn't have to be perfectly round. They're irregular. If you ever look on any brown trout in pictures, a lot of the spots are fairly irregular. They're not perfectly round. So I'm starting with larger spots at the bottom of the lure and then gradually working my way up, making putting them in random places and trying to group them fairly close together and moving all the way up the body, all the way up to the fins. And with each level, I move further up the body of the lure towards the dorsal part of it, the smaller and closer the spots get. So as you can see, this is what we're doing here. So we're starting at the tail section, and then we're going to work our way to the head of the lure, and then flipping it over and doing the other side as well in the same manner. So all three sections are done exactly the same, and I'll show you. You'll see the head where we kind of do a little bit of detail around the head and the gills with those black spots. So like I said, we're working with those dots, starting at the bottom, working all the way up to the top, going bigger to smaller. As we get to the top, we're going smaller, and we do every single section, all three, front and back and along the top. When all those black dots are done, you could do it you can either do each section with the black dots, working your way to the front, and then doing the back, and doing the other side, right and left. Or you could do one section at a time, front and back, and across the top. And putting in, if you ever look at brown trout, they have some red spots in them, and doing the red spots. I kind of chose to do each section separately, right, left, and the top, and then put the red dots in as I was going along when I was done with those sections. But you can do it however you want to do it. There's no right or wrong way. It's completely up to you. And then, like I said, after each color, I usually put a couple coats of polyurethane over just to protect each section as we go. So at this point in the build, I'm just getting ready to paint the dorsal part of the lure. I'm going to paint it an olive type color, so I can't remember if I used green and mixed it with a little bit of brown or yellow and brown or vice versa. Anyways, I made it an olive type color, and ever so lightly I just spritzed it along the dorsal area, adding a few layers here and there until I got what looked like the color that I wanted, and it looked like the color that a brown trout would look like in pictures or in real life. So that's what I did here. And then I kind of went down a little bit down the sides as well, ever so lightly, just to kind of tone that white down too. And again, you do this on all three sections on both sides of the lure. So now that I got the body painted and a coat of finish over the spots and the olive paint over the back, I am now going to start painting the tail fin, and I'm going to do it exactly in the same way that I did the fin on the brook trout in my last video. The same style. So basically what I did was I took some red, or not red, I'm sorry, a pearlescent orange, and I used the wicked golden yellow. Mixed that all together, thinned it out with some reducer, and I'm taking my brush and I'm just taking just a little bit of paint on that brush, and just lightly, I'm just painting, going over the base color of the yellow, and trying to make it look kind of streaky so that there's some, almost resembles the rays of a fin, kind of like what happened with the brook trout. And I think I achieved that on this lure. And obviously, if you do one side, you obviously do the other side. So there's no mystery to that. And that's kind of all I'm doing right now, is just doing this tail fin right now. Okay, well, after I've gotten the body all painted and everything, got the spots on, got the body sealed, got that dorsal part of the lure done, I decided it's probably, and the tail fin done, it's probably time we start doing some of the details on the fins and the head. So I painted the body, the underneath of the lure. I painted it. I took a gold yellow, thinned it out a little bit, and then sprayed on some very light multiple coats over it, over the fins and over that belly, and then up I'd say probably up to where the spots are on that middle part of the lure, and then just proceeded to paint the fins in the same manner that I painted the tail fin, and then using some really thin light black, making a streak so it looks like there's some sort of definition to the fins. From that point, I decided I need to start working on the head and adding some details to the head, like the gills and defining the gills and the jawline and everything like that. So I'm taking some really thin wicked red that I thinned out quite a bit with some reducer, and I'm going to paint some red along the gills so that it looks that way, kind of, maybe it gives that impression that the gills are open a little bit and you're seeing some of the gill rakers, kind of. And maybe if that's not the case, maybe there's a little bit of blood showing. But I did that on both sides of the head, underneath the gill. And then I took some thinned out transparent brown, very thin transparent brown, and I went over the red to kind of tone that down a little bit. I didn't want it to be super strong. I just wanted to have a subtle hint there. And I also used that brown to define the jawline of the fish or the lure, and also the remaining part of the gill, the gill flaps as well. And I did that on both sides, and that was a pretty time-consuming process. After I did all that, I took some really thinned out, I think it was Wicked Laguna Blue. It's a lighter blue. Thinned it out a little bit, and then I actually painted that where you see the spots, right underneath the spots on that Wicked Yellow. I actually did that. I painted some of that on there. Very, very light, though. Just wanted to add just a hint of it. And I continued using some gold and some bronze, mixtures of gold, bronze, and copper to kind of define the rest of the head. And you'll see at the end of this clip that how the head looks when it was all done. I also then took some glass eyes, and I drilled out actually the eye holes here at the sockets. I drilled those out. Took some glass eyes, got those painted up, black pupil. Then I used some. I think it was a copper color or gold. I think it was copper. I think I used copper. Yeah, I used copper. I used copper for the iris. Let that sprayed it. Let that dry. And then took a burnt umber ink that I have, and used that for around the iris. So if you look at any brown trout pictures, you'll see that they kind of have like a golden, they have a more how can I say this? Like a goldish color around the pupil, and then brown around the iris. Got that, and I took silver backing, put that in the back of the eye, and then epoxied everything in. After that, it will be off to the rotisserie where we're going to finally put some epoxy on this lure, let it dry, and then put it all together, and then we're going to go test it on the lake. Okay, so we've got the lure all painted. We're getting now. I'm ready to do the two-part epoxy clear coat. So again, this is a 1-to-1 mixture. Mix it up either by weight or volume. I haven't had any problems doing it either way. And I mixed it with some gold glitter. I'm painting it here. We paint it on with the brush, put it on rotisserie, and then hopefully in the next 24 hours we can put the lure together because it won't be tacky anymore. It'll be nice and dry. And then after that, we get it out on the water and see how it works. So I just wanted to thank everybody out there for watching my videos. You know, without you guys, obviously, the channel wouldn't be where it's at. And keep subscribing, keep watching, because I'm planning on putting more and more lure videos out. Springtime's coming up. We're going to start doing some steelhead fishing. Muskie season's coming up. We're going to start fishing for muskies, crappies, anything that's going to start biting this year. And then I got some camping trips planned out that we're also going to videotape as well and put out on the channel as well. So again, thanks to everybody for watching, and stay tuned here, and shortly let's watch this lure in action and see how it works. Well, unfortunately, you win a few, you lose a few. We've had some pretty good lures in the past that had some really good actions. Unfortunately, this one did not. I wasn't really happy with it at all. So it is back to the drawing board. You gotta learn from failures, right? So this is going to be a completely learning experience. So, like I said, back to the drawing board. And I just want to thank everyone for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe this video. And I'll see you on the next one. You guys have a great day.